It is morning huddle time. Chad Prinky here, and I am running today's show from a client's office, if you can see behind me. Thank you to New Dominion Construction for allowing me to hang out here this morning prior to our strategic planning meeting and running the session. New Dominion is an awesome company. A little quick free plug for those guys in exchange for their space. So I wanted to get rolling this morning talking similar to the vein that I started last week, which is, to share success stories of some of the contractors that I'm spending time with. And today I wanted to talk about a specific trade contractor who, had been consistently growing, but hadn't been pulling up their profit margins as they did it. I think that's one of the most common frustrations for contractors is that growth on the top line doesn't always translate to bottom line profitability. And there are a lot of different possible causes for that challenge. But in this particular case, one of the things that we saw when we kind of came in and got them to slow down and look at the business and evaluate what some root causes of this were. Here they had grown over the past 5 years about 40%, which is a nice healthy growth rate. But their bottom line had barely ticked up at all. And I could get into all the possible root causes of that. And that's exactly what we do is root cause analysis and figure that out and say, okay, where's this stemming from? In their case in particular, where that was stemming from was there was a clear trend that there were projects they were doing that were not helping them. They were not successful in doing those projects. So they had big revenue numbers attached to those projects, but those projects themselves weren't making money. But meanwhile, there were all these other projects that were making money, and there wasn't a common project manager or field staff. It wasn't directly attributable to their team's performance, their individual team's performance, as they had placed different high-performing team members on this project, and this project failed. But meanwhile, that same team was over on this other project, and that project did great. So what were the common threads? And what we figured out is there was a project type that was unhealthy for their business, that if they had removed the projects that fit this type, and it was a particular scope of work, without getting too much into detail, it was a particular scope of work that when they took on was unhealthy for their business. They did not know how to run that scope well. And so that leaves you with a decision as a business. Do we want to figure out how to get good at this scope of work? Or do we think there's actually enough opportunity in the market in our other scopes of work where we've proven we can perform to succeed? And so over the past 2 years, this company made the determination to focus on the work that they knew how to perform. And they cut out all the projects outside of that proven scope. They eliminated the projects that had been creating problems for them. That's a scary decision. As they did that, the first thing that happened is they were bidding less work, which meant they had to capitalize on the opportunities they were bringing in. And you know what was funny? As they bid less work, they actually bid better on the projects that they had. They went deeper and they worked them harder, and they actually sold these projects. And so over the past 2 years, while their top line revenue actually has stayed basically flat, so they maintained the gains that they picked up over that 5-year stretch of growth, but they did not grow any more over the past 2 years. What's happened is their bottom line has tripled. And so now they've gone from running at about a 6% net profit to in the mid to high teens in net profit on that work. Now, the next question is, how will they grow from here? Fun problems to solve. But I leave you with that. And I want to introduce today's guest. So today's guest is Alex Kablanian. He is from ServiceTitan. Alex, thank you so much for joining us for the Morning Huddle.
Great to be here. And that was a great story you just shared. I will say it is not dissimilar to what I hear from a lot of contractors who have focused on top line growth. And what I tell them is the same thing. You got to understand your business, see the insights, and then you make the call on if you're going to try to optimize for finding new opportunities that are profitable or taking the work that exists today that's a little bit tough and turning it around. So that's an amazing anecdote you just shared.
Yeah, man. It's this is, a part of what can be so fun and so challenging to be a contractor, right? I think the real secret is to get visibility into the story behind the numbers. And that's a key point that I know you're all about at ServiceTitan. So I'm going to talk a little bit about ServiceTitan and then have you expand on that, but just want the audience to have some context. So I've got Alex in here to come in and sort of talk about he's very similar to me, but even on a larger scale, he has, visibility into what's going on with hundreds, if not thousands of contractors at any point in time. And ServiceTitan is one of the leading platforms, one of the leading softwares for contractors across the United States. They are particularly well known historically for having kind of a best-in-class solution for service contractors. So your mechanical contractors, your plumbing contractors, your roofing contractors, and so on, have built quite a reputation with ServiceTitan. So much so that I would say you're the 800-pound gorilla in that space. Would you agree?
I would not phrase it as 800-pound gorilla, but I would say this: we have been really privileged to work with some of the absolute best service contractors over the last 15 plus years since Ara and Vahe started the business, and in turn, they've helped us become an amazing platform for other contractors to use. So we have certainly benefited from their success, and we like to think that we've helped contribute to that as well.
No, and I think that's how you get there, right? You don't get to be big just by being big, right? You got to be good.
Yep, exactly.
And so the success story that is ServiceTitan that is rooted in that service contracting space. You're also, and I think you specifically, Alex, have been tasked with helping to grow the footprint with a new product, a revised product, that is specifically designed for the self-perform construction sector, so that those same mechanicals that might have a service division, they've probably been banging on your door and saying, like, I need your tech for construction. So how long's that been happening? And tell us a little bit about that product line.
Definitely. And you're spot on. Everything we do here starts with our customers. And usually every good idea we have is not our idea. It's a customer telling us, you got to do X, you got to do Y, you got to enter industry X or industry Z. And in this case, for years we had focused, to your point, on the residential service side of the trades ecosystem, specifically since we founded the company in 2012 with our founders, Ara and Vahe, starting the business to serve their own fathers' contracting businesses. And about 4 or 5 years ago, what we realized is a big, vast majority of our existing customers actually had either commercial service or construction projects, self-perform parts of their business that either we weren't supporting, or candidly, no one was really supporting that well from a technology perspective. And so seeing that trend in the data of our customers and seeing the big market opportunity that's there actually led us to decide, how can we build a platform that really serves as the operational layer for an entire trades business, not just a service portion, not just the residential portion, not just the mechanical portion, but actually bringing all these different areas together in one best-in-class platform. So that was really the driving thesis here. And specifically, we believe strongly that if you connect a service and a self-perform project construction arm into one umbrella, you will have a better software to help you build a better business. And so that's the name of the game that we're in right now. And to your point, 2 years ago when I took over this specific role, that's what Ara and Vahe tasked me to do. And that's what I've been lucky to do for the last couple of years.
That's awesome. So is there a different, just for my own and for our audience's clarity, is there a different product name or something like that for the construction product, for the trade, self-perform trade contractor product?
It's actually one single core platform. So there's no different name. It's ServiceTitan is ServiceTitan. What we've done is built different modules within the platform that connect into the existing base of what people think about when they think about ServiceTitan. So people think scheduling, dispatching, invoicing, marketing. They don't always think project management, Gantt charts, service agreements, contracts, quoting and estimating. And so we've brought all that into our existing platform, because what we've realized is most of these businesses operate as one business that do many different things. So what we didn't want to do is create a separate, solution here that's different than the solution that many of these contractors were already using. And we're lucky to be able to do that based on, the tech we've built over the last 15 years or so.
Yeah, I think structurally, I would of the 100 or so companies that we are working with in our small business, I would say 40 to 50% of them have both a construction and service division. And if they don't, we are often helping them to build a service division or a construction division, because diversification is wise, and you got the same end user. Right. The same end user in so many cases that, if you're doing an excellent job for them on install, why wouldn't you want to service what you install? And so on and so forth.
Exactly. And to your point, I think a lot about diversification. And I think that's one very, very clear benefit of having a business structured like that. The other one is, if you think about it, both parts of the business serve as lead generation for the other part of the business. And so what I always tell contractors is, hey, you want to grow your projects arm. That's great. One of the best ways to do that is by having a service arm that's constantly building relationships with buildings, with property managers. Right. Understand. Right. So when a big retrofit comes up in 5 years, you're the first person they think of, and vice versa. You just installed a big project. You just spent, $5 million top line to be able to bring in a project that you aggressively bid on, that you put, months, if not years of hard work on. Take the opportunity to flip it into your service division as, the best lead you can possibly have, because no one will know how to service that better than you can. You installed the 100 rooftop units for, a specific building. So for me, I think about it both as diversification of the actual business, but then also as a really complementary lead engine to be able to grow that business very sustainably over time.
Yep, that makes sense. There are a bunch of compelling reasons to get into the service business, and I do want to kind of focus on that for a minute with you. But there are compelling reasons for diversification in general, as we've just described. Right? You've got upside. If you're already doing this, why not do that? If you're already doing that, why not do this? And there's opportunities to serve the customer really well in there. And like I say, it's ultimately the same end user in so many cases, so the relationships can pay off on both ends. When you are starting, so a lot of our audience are going to be construction first companies, and most of our clients are construction first clients, even if they have a service arm or they want to have a service arm. When you see companies, your clients, decide to get into service, what are some of the exciting things in store what are some of the things that they should be considering when they open up a service business? And how would you clearly sort of differentiate, like, hey, if I'm listening to this right now and I'm like, you know what, damn it, I really ought to get into the service side of business. Here I am doing electrical install work all over the place, and I'm not servicing anything. I ought to get into that. What would be your, I'm not going to say, caution, but your words of wisdom in general? Like, what are the things that you see?
I would say that two things jump to mind. One is, because you've had such a history of successful projects and installs, the first thing I would do, and this is what I advise a lot of folks, is pull every single project that you've done in the last 5 years and put an estimated contract value or service value that you think you can win from each of those installs, and see what that size is. It could be $500,000 of revenue a year, could be $10,000 of revenue a year. That should be the first thing that you do to understand, do you want to enter this specific space? Because if you do, the first people you should talk to are the people you've done work with before. So that's sort of, caution or opportunity point one, I would say, is the lowest hanging fruit. And that will be the area that you can see, is this going to be successful or not, without having to stand up an outbound sales motion, marketing dollars, et cetera.
Right.
The second point I would say is, I don't think anything gets done well without focus. And what I mean by that is, don't just start something and pull 4 of your installers off and advise them to be service techs. Hire a service manager, hire specific service technicians who are skilled and understand, how to interact with specific customers, how to perform A+ service. And that will also be likely the way for you to take this from, a pet project on the side that you will always deprioritize into a first-class citizen to your company.
I love that. That's great advice. And there's definitely this sort of opportunistic, like maybe we'll dabble, type of thing. And you know what's a really, really good recipe for not growing your service business is dabbling in your service business. Not only because it deserves full-time focus and needs, really does need it to grow, but also because if you don't, one of the things about service that is really important to understand is that if you don't create ecstatic, really, really happy customers, you don't get to keep them. Yep. In the construction side, I can argue that it's also true, but in the construction side, because the nature of the low bid machine that often is happening, and we help companies to beat that all the time because it's not real, but it does exist, like that piece of it, meaning when I say it's not real, I mean it's not a rule, right? It can be, that rule can be broken, but it does exist. I can kind of suck, but as long as I'm cheap, I can kind of get construction work. That is not the case on service, man. Yep. Like if you kind of suck, they're not going to keep you on the service side. And one of the other things you briefly touched on, but boy, is it a difference, is sales and marketing. If you're doing construction today, let's pretend you're a 50-person construction company. Chances are pretty good if you got a 50-employee construction company that sales in your world looks an awful lot like maybe the owner, the founder, doing some relationship development, business development in the market, bidding work, and there's your sales engine, bidding, waiting, and winning. Like there's a fair amount of construction companies, most construction companies that I run into somewhere in between 50 and 200 employees. That's how they're winning work. For the most part. That is not how service works, man. You don't just get to have one salesperson as the founder, generating leads. If you had and this, I'll turn to you from your experience. If there's 100 employee service company out there, how many sellers do they likely have?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's going to depend on the growth profile of the business for sure. There are certain folks who are, extremely new business oriented, which candidly we love. I think we want to help our customers achieve whatever goals they set out for them. I would say the most growth oriented 100-person service businesses, you're looking at least 5 to 10 sellers. And that's, I would say, on the more aggressive end. And so that said, I mean, we see folks who are as minimal as 1 or 2 who are, if they're highly effective. But I would say 5 to 10 is what we see more and more. And, it's part of the reason we recently acquired a company about 9 months ago called Convex, which specifically focuses on commercial service and projects prospecting. How do you find the properties, the businesses, and the contacts that you can reach out to as a selling team to be able to actually build a relationship that can last, months or years before you're able to win any sort of service or project work down the line. And so, we see the outbound sales motion be pretty effective. What we don't see as much is marketing. Candidly, there's not a lot of folks who are out there marketing in the commercial space, and so I don't know if that'll change over time, but that's definitely not something we're seeing as much.
Yeah, it's now when you say commercial space juxtaposed with residential. Residential, the whole game is marketing,
the whole game is marketing. Yeah,
right. It's SEO and it's pay per click and it's all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Where when you go into the commercial space, there isn't a lot of money spent on marketing. There's look, one of the beautiful things about the commercial space is that you do work with the same people over and over and over again. That does make your cost of sale lower.
Yep.
By nature, because you get an account, and if you do great work, you keep the account. And if that company grows, then you grow with that company.
Yep. Yeah. And the best in class, renewal rate that we see for service contracts as an example in commercial is like 95, 98%. So your work determines how well your business will do, plain and simple. Those folks will go refer you. Property managers will change hand to hand and bring you with them as, a trusted vendor. And so, we always advise that, nothing can replace quality. So you can hire the entire sales team, best sales team in the world will be great. But if you're not performing quality, on time, high value work, then it ain't going to matter over time.
Yep. All right, let's shift gears into this construction end because it's just fun. I love talking with people who understand both ends of the spectrum like you. It's a good conversation. But if we focus in on construction, what innovative strategies, technologies can help to maximize labor efficiency and project management in the self-perform contractor construction space?
Yeah, it's a great question. And honestly, it's one we ask ourselves just about every day when we think about what new products are we going to build. The way I think about it is the labor shortage is probably the most top of mind thing in the entire industry. Skilled labor is hard to find. There are more projects out there probably than ever before in the US, which means demand is certainly not an issue, but your labor capacity and making sure that you're bidding profitably for all this work are basically the two biggest challenges that we always think about. Now, the way we've tried to solve this problem is giving an insane amount of visibility to our customers about what projects they are doing are working for them and what projects are not working for them. It all starts from there from my perspective, because what we want to do is make sure that our contractors are armed with the data to go and find the projects that they actually want to win first and foremost. Once they do, for me, the big question is how do you give them the full insight into their capacity from two levels. One is just the types of people they have working. Do they have the installer capacity over X months to actually service the amount of projects that they're looking to effectively bid? And so our tools offer an insane amount of forward-looking capacity based on what's been won, what's been scheduled from a project perspective, and what hours have been allocated for crews and installers to actually go and perform that work. Doing those two things for me is basically like tip of the spear in terms of understanding, are we actually arming our customers with data they need to be able to effectively run all the projects? Could be, customers running, 50 projects at one time, right? That's very top of mind. The other thing we think about a lot is how do we just reduce general administrative labor? And it's not just for techs and installers and foremen in the field. It's also project managers in the back office. Their time is highly valuable. They are skilled. They know their industry inside and out. What they don't need to do is spend hours fumbling with timesheets, with sharing progress from the field to the back office, tracking down change order X or RFI Z. So the more that we can do to cut down on those administrative tasks, the more time we give them to be able to devote to their projects, whether that's, again, doing more piping work in the field or in the back office, trying to manage things a little bit more efficiently.
So what functionally, what gives me that administrative time back? Like how do I get the administrative time back?
For me, the big one is actually streamlining your field to office communication. So as an example, what we see a lot is, hey, I showed up to a job site and it looks like the previous sub who was supposed to finish this part of the project actually hasn't finished this part of the project. Or it looks like there's a wall here that shouldn't be here based on the plan specs that I've done. And so, that could waste an entire day from a working capacity perspective. And so what we spend a lot of time on is how do we make sure that we are connecting the foreman and the installer from the field to the office, such that if there's anything unexpected that pops up, the project manager knows about it instantly so that they can do two things. Thing one is, how do I make sure that the GC or a fellow sub is able to give me the information I need that I'm missing based on what is at the job site? And then two is, let's say the installer or foreman can't do a specific portion of the project that day. Well, that's capacity that I then need to go and move somewhere else. Maybe it's a different floor of the same building. Maybe it's a different project site entirely. And so being able to streamline that is huge for actually being able to do something actionable with that information, such that you can, not waste a bunch of hours. So that's probably the most important thing that I think of. There's a lot of other stuff that happens, like, from an administrative burden perspective, making sure that project managers actually have a track of open RFIs, change orders, progress bills, such at the tip of their fingers, so they don't have to go searching through their email constantly. Making sure that, payroll and timekeeping and scheduling is at the tip of your fingers, so you're not ruffling through a bunch of papers or looking at a whiteboard that says, foreman crew X is supposed to be at project site Y, and so on and so forth.
I love how visual you are. I guess you literally are turning around to your make-believe board.
Yeah, it's a real board. There's no information on it.
Yeah.
But
It's the best. I'm the same way. I'm
Yeah.
exactly the same way. So that helps for sure when you think about. So I want to share a quick story with you. This is just happened last week. So I was with a great trade contractor last week, about a 400, 500 employee, I can't remember, somewhere in that zone. Self-performed contractor that does both service and construction, though definitely construction first. 90% construction. Small. They have a small, but mighty, growing service business. And their gross profit margin is 24%, right, on blended across all of their jobs. And we were having this conversation about goals for the next 3 years and what are we going to accomplish. And I said, you got to get the 24% to be more like 34%. And your jaws hit the floor. They were like, that's no freaking way. Like, that's crazy. Or the market won't bear that, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I'm not telling you to sell for more. Right. And they were like, what? Right. So I started, I know this company inside and out. Right. So I sat there and I made a list of all the inefficiencies that I know occur in their business: administrative inefficiencies, waste because people are out on job sites that, aren't ready for them, waste because we send an 8-man crew where we could have sent a 4-man crew, waste because, right, like all this different type of stuff. I said, how often does this happen? How often does this happen? How often? We made just a quick punch list and it took about 20 minutes and it was hysterical. They were like, we should be at like 40. I was like, I know. There's a lot of money and you're never going to make it perfect. There's always going to be problems. There are always going to be surprises. The perfect plan rarely works out perfectly, right? As we know, but there is so much money to be saved. And if you saved that money, let's pretend now that was actually true, that you were going to market at 34% at the same price point. If times got tight and everybody dropped their margins, you could run at 24%, we've proven, and still make money. But now you can be way, way, way less expensive and actually not put yourself out of business. And any contractor that has ever been through really skinny times, who's had to get tight and figure out how the hell to make money when they couldn't get their price or anything close to it, knows exactly what I'm talking about. That when they're desperate, all of a sudden they find a bunch of cash in the way that they're managing their work. What if you ran your work that way as a standard operating procedure? What if that was just the way you ran your work? And what you're doing is you're tech enabling that process. You're providing them with tools to help to reduce the waste. So that leads me to a question that I really, I'm totally putting you on the spot here. And I know that there are probably some data that you just can't get your hands on right on the spot, but do you have a sense of ROI for your product when somebody makes the investment in your product, what you're able to give them in return for that on the construction side?
Yeah, the way I always frame this is you should not buy ServiceTitan if we don't help you deliver business outcomes. Just hard stop. I say this.
You should buy X. Period. Yeah. Right.
Exactly. It's how we think about, honestly, it's how we think about buying software at ServiceTitan as well. And so, I tell every prospect and every customer I talk to that, one, you should build a business case before you buy software or anything. Right. Two, hold us accountable to what the ROI is that you're underwriting at the time of purchase. Yep. And three, you can let me know personally if we're not delivering that. And I will either find a way to do it or, we'll amicably part ways if it's not happening. Right. And so for us, we think about ROI as two particular metrics that we like to influence. The first one is revenue growth. The second one is actually what you just described, gross margin percentage.
Yeah, growing GP.
Yeah, I do not believe in helping folks just drive the top line, because I actually think that we may be doing them a disservice, because
I just wrote an article about this.
Exactly.
Totally agree. Yeah, I've done it, by the way, totally irresponsibly. They're like, I really want to grow. I'm like, okay, let's go get you growth. And then they come to me and they're like, why did you let me do that to myself?
Exactly. Yeah, the big one for me, what I always say is, you may want to go into hyper growth. You may want to grow sustainably. You may want to have a lifestyle business. That's all well and good. All of those need to be on the same strong foundation that you believe in, such that if you want to pour gas on the fire, it's your prerogative, but you shouldn't pour gas on the fire of something that's going to burn your house down, right? And so those are the two metrics we track internally, and just about everything we build will optimize one of those two things. We either want to help you estimate and win bids or service contracts better, and we want to help you do that work so effectively such that you can take your gross margin from 24% to 34% or 34% to 40%. If we're not doing one of those two things, I usually tell our product team, stop building that, whatever you're building, if it doesn't do one of those two things. And then ultimately what that translates to from a customer perspective is, we typically sit down with our prospects and our customers and say, what are your business goals for this upcoming year? You want to grow your revenue by X% and your profit by Y%. Let's talk about the 3-4 things you really have to do in ServiceTitan to make those things happen. And let's track that. You're putting all of your invoices, your progress, your costs into ServiceTitan. I can tell you in 1 month, in 2 months, in 3 months, if you're on track or off track to achieve your business goals. So let's have an open conversation about that as your year evolves. And let's make sure that you are getting the goal, you're attaining the goals that you signed up for as a business, and we're helping you get there. So that's typically how I think about it from a customer perspective. It's no different than how we've thought about the software for years. It's just a different part of the market we're not talking about it with.
Yep, that makes total sense. So we're getting close on time, and I really appreciate your being with us this morning. So I want to cut to something that I know is on all of our audience's mind. How many customers do you guys have? Round numbers.
Yeah, we're in well over the upper thousands, let's call it. So
maybe not 10,000, but like maybe 8,000 or 9,000, somewhere in that zone.
We recently went public, which we're really lucky to do. So I'm not allowed to share all the numbers, but you can always flip to our investor site and you'll be able to see all the data that you can see.
I'm with you, but so suffice it to say, many thousands
of contractors, ranging from as small as 3 or 4 technicians up to the thousands of technicians and installers. And
I'm many of our clients use ServiceTitan. Some at my advice, because I've seen what you can do. So I asked that as a basis for the following question, which is, what do your contractors see happening in the commercial market in 2024 and now into 25? What's the general feel out there? And I know one of the things for sure that comes up in a lot of my conversations, people are like, have we hit bottom on commercial occupancy? Like, is this it? Did we finally get there? Because man, last year was painful, type of thing. So I understand that there's, macro data that you can't really report on per se, right? That you pull through. So I'll just ask anecdotally, what's the feel?
Yeah, I'll say this. It's been a rough 4 years. Ever since COVID, it's been really rough. There's been a lot of changes. Every year there's optimism. Every year there's pessimism, and everything in between. I will say anecdotally, talking to probably 10 different customers on any given week. Anecdotally, folks are feeling busier. They're feeling like the occupancy levels are rising. They're feeling like work is there. Obviously, things like new construction and projects are at all-time highs. There's always just new types of projects coming online, especially with a lot of the recent regulations about data centers, et cetera. But even just standard service work, it feels like there's more energy around it this year. And a lot of the conversations I've been having are from folks who are energized to actually grow that portion of the business for the first time in a while, which is exciting. I think it's what folks have been waiting for. I think we're seeing it in terms of also just some of the news that's out there. You're seeing a lot of return to office mandates, cropping up. You're seeing, things like that have been a stark change from the last couple of years. And for me, that's a point of optimism. But what I also like to tell our customers is, even if that's not happening, we need to help you build a sustainable business such that if there are peaks and valleys, you are armed to be able to sustain either, thrive in the peaks, make sure you're around in the valleys.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, there's, you can't use the economy as an excuse for not being successful. You've got to figure out a way to be successful regardless of economic times. Now, your definition of success might change a bit, and that's okay, right? But to your point, surviving and not having to lay people off en masse is an example. Maybe your definition of success. That's okay. But point is, you can't use the economy as an excuse forever, for sure. But overall, I'll pile on. I'm hearing the same thing. I'm hearing and seeing the same stuff. Now, my home base is the DC market, but we do business all over the country. Certainly in DC, when back to office for federal workers was announced, it was like, oh, thank goodness. We've been waiting for that, for a long time. And there's a whole tax structure in DC that makes that, super important. Now, on the flip side, there's, cutting federal programs and all that kind of, so we rely here in this market on, so heavily on the federal government as a key portion of the economy. There's a lot of question marks, but overall, I agree with the sense of optimism, particularly as it's framed toward the commercial market sector. And I'm glad that you're seeing that across your many thousands, as I see that across our 100.
Yep. No, it's good. It's an exciting time. I think there's a lot of folks who are ready for things to pick up, and so we're excited to see what happens in the next couple of years here. That's
awesome, man. Well, great. Any parting words? Anything else that you want to toss in there before we wrap up?
I think parting words, I would just say one, thank you for having me. It's a privilege to work for an industry that is so critical to the world, both, the buildings that power our economy, but also the homes. We have many customers who do both commercial, residential, new construction, and service. And so it's a privilege to be here. It's a privilege to spend some time with you and to the many viewers. Thank you for everything that you do. You guys are amazing, and we're lucky to be just a part of your amazing journeys.
Hey, thanks, man. We appreciate you. Keep doing what you're doing, making life easier for the contractors you serve. It's great.
Appreciate that.
All right, Alex. Thank you for joining us, guys. I'm going to go to a quick sponsor timeout, and then I'll jump back on and talk a little bit about next week. The Morning Huddle Construction Show is fortunate to have 5 sponsors for Season 7, helping us to spread the word and create positive change in the construction industry. And we want to give a shout out to each of them and thank them now. First is Katz Abosch. This is a middle market accounting firm with a deep specialization in construction, tax, audit, accounting, fantastic group of people. Next is Lawrence Law. This is a boutique law firm that works with contractors and helps them with their day-to-day legal needs, as well as all of their most significant legal challenges that they might run up against. Lawrence Law. Then we have Sandy Spring Bank, which is a regional bank in Maryland, with a group of people who really understand what the needs of construction businesses are and who partner with you to achieve your financial aims. So Sandy Spring Bank. And then we have Marsh McLennan Agency, bonding and insurance professionals who really just have unparalleled insight into the construction industry. They're the best in the business. And then lastly, we have Genesis AEC. And Genesis is a full service architecture, engineering, and construction management firm with a deep specialization in the life sciences industry. We also happen to have some of their folks help us with guest hosting from time to time. All right, let's talk a little bit about next week. So next week we have on Hannah Williams. Hannah is going to speak with us. She's coming to us from Salary Transparent Street. She's just been blowing up online with her viral content all over LinkedIn and all the social medias. And what they're doing is bringing a level of salary transparency to the employer market and the employee market, which is really, really useful and also a little scary. One of the things that I'm really excited to speak with her about is the fear that people have about being transparent with salaries, why they should get over that fear, and how to embrace the idea of salary transparency inside your business. So check us out for that episode next week. I also just wanted to do a quick shout out for Well Built Consulting, which is my firm. We are holding a leadership boot camp on March 5th through 7th. We are going to have 20 people in the session, and we have like 3 seats remaining at this point for folks who want to join. It is leadership readiness and executive readiness specific for construction professionals. If that's something that interests you, you can check that out. Just go to our website, wellbuiltconsulting.com. You can follow the pop-ups and stuff like that that'll take you to the leadership boot camp. I think that does it for me. Hopefully we get to hang out with Stacy again next week. Looking forward to having her back with us. Thanks so much for spending your time with us today. We'll see you soon.